Okay, here we are at Search Engine Strategies London 2008. And with me I have Adam Lasnik from Google. Welcome, Adam.
Hey, thanks.
Adam, for those that don't know, tell us a little bit about what you do at Google.
Yeah, sure. My formal title is Search Evangelist, but what I actually focus on is Webmaster Communications. And that ranges from working with big webmasters to small, medium-sized webmasters. The important thing is helping webmasters understand how they can best have their site in Google, how they can improve their site's presence in Google. And of equal importance, it's for us to understand what are webmaster concerns so that we can do better documentation, better outreach, and essentially be better partners. And I'm in the middle of all that, but what's better is that I'm working with a team internationally that also focus on webmaster relations.
Okay, super. So we corresponded just briefly about rich media sites as a topic that comes up for you in terms of what's Google compliant Flash and Ajax. So many developers using those applications to create new websites. Can you share some thoughts on that and what
sure.
webmasters should know?
Yeah, we do get that question a lot, particularly as the whole Web 2.0, I say in quotes, Web 2.0 feeling is proliferated. People want to have sites that are engaging, that are using rich media, using Flash, Ajax, and so on. But there's a bit of concern and fear out there that they want to make sure that the site is both compliant with Google and still going to be attractive and useful for users. And the key rules of thumb here are to make the site not only effective in that it has certainly a lot of good content in there, take the navigation out. So you want it so people can get to wherever they want to get to in your site, whether they're using a phone for their browser, whether they're using a text browser, perhaps they're sight impaired, or they're on low bandwidth. The other important consideration is that it should be equivalent, and that means that whatever text you have showing in that Flash has to be exactly the same text that you have showing in your no embed or no script. What we've seen sometimes is that people will have like Bud's Travel Agency, and they'll have just that phrase or that logo in the Flash, and then in the non-Flash part they'll have Bud's Travel Agency, great trips, cheap flights, etc. And like, oh wow, that's keyword stuffing, and that's not going to look good. The question we get a lot about this is what technology should we use, and for that I would say really I wouldn't worry too much whether you're using Cipher or SWF Object, as long as it is equivalent and as long as it degrades nicely for those folks who can't see that rich media. Lastly, I would advise you, your viewers, to go check out a couple of posts that we made that actually highlight a lot of the best practices in Flash. You can find that on our official Webmaster blog.
Okay, super. One other question that's pretty common that comes up that is duplicate content, and I guess I have a particular question in terms of, because our business works with online PR so much and press releases and that sort of thing, and I'm sure this has been addressed at conferences from time to time, but are there certain types of duplicate content that are, I guess, acceptable, or, how does that factor in, especially something like a press release that might get picked up by multiple news outlets, you know what I mean? And how does is there a canonicalization issue or authoritative issue, and how does that work?
So the first thing I should do is reassure you that actual penalties for duplicate content, that's really rare. I can't think of the last time I saw that, because in the vast majority of cases, we see duplicate content as either being inadvertent or being useful for the user. Getting your content out there, whether it's syndicating it, whether like with a press release it ends up just getting picked up by a lot of different areas, that's fine. That's not something we'd want to penalize.
Of course.
So the question then becomes, how can you work with duplicate content so that it works to your advantage? And a couple best practice ideas. If you are going to syndicate your content, whether it's content or a press release, one of the best things you can do is make sure that the authorship is attributed properly. So you say, written by so-and-so for such and such site, or noted by thiscompany.com, and make sure that's a link that goes back to the original source. Because when we're trying to figure out what's the canonical version, sometimes it can be a little bit harder for us to figure that out. But if there's a link and it's all going back to that one source page, that can help us identify that site as the canonical version. The other thing, though, is that If you have a lot of duplicate content within your site, let's say you have printer pages and then you have, for instance, your CMS has a lot of different URLs for the same content. Again, that's not something we're going to penalize you for, but there could be some issues of PageRank diffusion. So to whatever extent you can, 301, do it yourself to a canonical version, so that for every product or for every article, you have just one URL that folks are going to link to.
Okay.
And that can definitely help you out a bit, both with PageRank and also reducing confusion for your users.
Well, along those lines, what do you think about this notion of sculpting or trimming PageRank by using nofollow on printer pages and that sort of thing? Is that a good advice? Or
That's an interesting question. And what I would say is, first of all, I wouldn't worry too much about the PageRank sculpting internally. I've heard a lot of folks that are like, oh wow, we have so many pages and we want to make sure the PageRank goes to the right one. I think a far more effective and more efficient way of going about directing PageRank to your favorite pages is to really prioritize those within your navigation. Don't make it 3 levels deep. And I'm not talking here about directory hierarchy, but rather click hierarchy. If there's a page that you feel is important, link to it from your front page. And people say, oh, but wait, my privacy policy or my About Us page, I don't want that getting the PageRank. You know what, I'll be honest with you. A lot of your users really do want to see that. That gives them a sense of comfort in your company, a sense of trust. So while you may feel that, oh, that's not as important as our latest sale, I would frankly go with it. If with all that said you do want to sculpt a bit of PageRank, sure, you can use nofollow. It's not something that we're not going to frown upon it if you are no-following certain pages or certain sections. But it's just that I wouldn't really spend your time worrying about that part.
Okay, great. And one last thing I'm going to ask you.
Sure.
The time we have left, I'm wondering if you could use that as a way to address something that's top of mind for you in terms of common questions you get on the forum, Webmaster Central community that you'd like to address here.
Yeah, sure. I mean, sometimes we get some pretty funny questions. I remember one that we got was, I want my site to show up for everybody's name. And one of the great things about the forum is that you can actually then go in and say, well, could you tell us a little more? What do you mean? And in this particular case, the guy was making a white pages site, and he just wanted to show up for every single name in the entire phone book. So that one was a little bit tougher. But most of the time we get some really thoughtful questions. They're dealing with linguistic issues. I have sites in different countries. Do I need to have them hosted in each country separately? Do I need to have a separate TLD? And that was actually covered a bit this morning, which I thought was great. Our advice on that, by the way, is it is definitely a helpful signal to have a TLD, a top-level domain, .de.com, that reflects where your target is, and hosting can also play a role. But I think lastly, the bigger picture that I would get at here is that we started a year ago with just one user group. We call it our U2U group. And before that, there was pretty much just Google Guy. And one of the things I'm most excited and proud about, and I think is of great value to webmasters, now we have over a dozen. We have these groups in many languages all over the world, and people that are search quality engineers, search quality analysts that are answering questions and helping to build a community. And so my biggest advice, I think, to close out on, I suppose, with webmasters, if you have a question, sure, go ahead and post it on your blog and we may find it, but make sure you take a moment to actually search through our blog and search through any one of these more than a dozen forums, because odds are, I would almost bet you anything, odds are someone has asked a similar question and gotten a good answer or a set of good answers, because we really want, at the end of the day, we want your good content, we want you to be helped. So I hope you'll come and check out Webmaster Central if you haven't already.
Okay, super. Thanks a lot, Adam.
Yeah, pleasure.
This is Lee with Online Marketing Blog at Search Engine Strategies in London.